So now on to our quarterly live discussion. So when we met in January, we had a lengthy discussion about what this group might like to achieve throughout the course of this calendar year. And one of the things that came up was some professional development for our own benefit. And that was the result of that is quarterly live discussions. And so this will be our third one. During that January call, our colleague Russell Hill jumped up and said, "Hey, I'd like to organize one of these." And so Russell is a associate 4-H youth development advisor with University of California, and he has invited a former colleague of his, Lupita Fabregas, who is the director of the Missouri 4-H Center for Youth Development. They're going to talk to us today about the intercultural development inventory and cultural competencies. So I'll hand it over to you. If you all need anything from me, just let me know. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully you all will see the first slide on there. Great. So thank you very much for having us. Lupita and I are going to share a little bit about a process, a program, an intervention. There's lots of parts to this that we began in California in 2014. And so just to share again a little bit, this process was initially started in the 4-H program here in California, University of California. And we're going to talk about some of the successes and how it might actually support the things that you're trying to accomplish in your own systems. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about what is the Intercultural Development Inventory. So it is a product that we paid to participate in. Lupita and I are both what's considered qualified administrators, which means when somebody participates in the assessment, which is an online tool, she and I are qualified to provide feedback to the individuals or groups who've taken this IDI. Now, again, this is a product. We went this direction. There are many other products out there that somebody might focus on for intercultural competence. This was just the one we decided to go with. And this was sort of the back end of where we started with this competency, was just more of like finding out about our system. Where was our 4-H program? Where were the staff at within their own, knowing about where their intercultural competence levels were. So this assessment basically will show you a little bit more about, and there's a continuum we'll show you, but it was really just a starting point for us. And out of that, we created a sort of an intervention, and we'll talk about that as well. So IDI is a theory-based assessment of intercultural competence. It is valid internationally, so the same questions are used in somewhere around 35 or 40 languages, and they're valid for every cultural group that people take this within. So it could be for a Middle Eastern cultural group, European American cultural group, Asian groups. This assessment works very well across those areas. And what the IDI does, again, this is their language, it allows you to see an individual or a group's progression along a continuum regarding their cross-cultural competence. And it addresses and measures both the mindset of an individual and their skill set. So it's a two-part component to this. And we'll show you some slides there with that information. So the IDI, the theory starts out with this the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity. Bennett in 1986 came up with this continuum where on one side we have this monocultural mindset, and on the other side is an intercultural mindset. And we look at it as a continuum because even though somebody may achieve adaptation as part of when they take their assessment, that doesn't mean that you know everything about every cultural group that you're working with. It just means that you're able to adapt to the situation, sit back, listen, hear what people are saying, and be able to interact within those areas. So again, this is the continuum. On one side, we have denial. Somebody in denial, and these are just the terms used. It doesn't mean that you are in denial of culture. It's just where you're born at. So somebody who's born, say, in the deep, the jungles of, say, Brazil or Argentina, those groups who have very little interaction within the outside world may live in a denial or a monocultural mindset, because that's the information that they live and have and make their decisions based on. So those people may miss differences when they go work with other groups or interact with other groups. They might miss the differences that are there. And then we have polarization, where that person or that individual or that group might actually judge differences. So they might see differences, but say, my culture is better than theirs, or their culture is better than mine based on these experiences. Then we have this group called minimization, and sort of, if you looked at this and you spread it flat on a table, it would look like a bell curve, with the majority of individuals fitting somewhere in minimization, trailing ends, adaptation, and denial. So in the middle, we have minimization, and that's a group of individuals who want to de-emphasize difference. They want to go along to get along. They want to fit in with a group and find the similarities, and sort of at the same time not really look for the differences. And there's a lot of adaptation and reasons why people might do that. And moving forward, we have somebody who might actually comprehend difference and acceptance and understand it, yet they're still challenged with what do they do with that information. Even though they can recognize the differences, it's hard to interact or act on those differences. And then finally, we have people that move into adaptation. And I'll use an example. When I first started this process, I was in minimization, and I was on that trailing end, leading into acceptance. And after doing this program for a year, going through the process, becoming a qualified administrator with the team, and working through it, I was able, when I took the post-assessment, after we did our own intervention, I moved myself in towards adaptation. But my adaptation doesn't end there. There are still groups that I work with that I know that I don't work with, that I don't know much about. And this information, again, when we started using it, it was considered personal information. We don't share this with anybody. So when we did our feedback sessions, this was for individual personal growth. It was not used for anybody's placement in the organization. It was not used for promotion or merit. The information was never given to their supervisor. So if we had somebody who was a qualified administrator, we would not provide, I wouldn't provide the feedback session to my own staff. It was sort of a really personal endeavor that we wanted people to engage in. So the next point is, why did we do this? So in California, or why do we do this generally? So research indicates that building intercultural competence among our staff is critical to reaching diversity and inclusion goals in our organization. And we understood this actually in our system in 2014. California had a California 4-H program, had a USDA review, and then that comes just before the audit. And the review showed that we were in a deficit in serving California's communities, particularly our Hispanic, Latino, Latinx communities, the same levels that we were within the white population that was here, and we were out of whack. So we had somewhere around 14 things that we needed to address over a series of years, and that included increasing staff intercultural competence to better work with communities that they were a part of. And now, knowing the size of California, if you know the size of California, you know that there's parts of California that there might be more larger Black communities, there might be larger Asian communities, and that's a broad spectrum. So our work was really about intercultural competence. It wasn't really focusing specifically on the Latinx community and increasing our knowledge about the Latinx community, although that was a large component of it. So Mitch Hammer is the gentleman who developed the IDI LLC company and used the theory that Bennett had come up with to really start looking at an assessment tool. So intercultural competence professional development efforts are more successful when they're based on an individual's developmental orientation as assessed by that IDI test. So what does that mean? Well, when we first did our assessments, the pre-assessment, we started looking at where was the organization as a whole. So the organization was in minimization, but we had people across the spectrum that were anywhere from denial all the way into acceptance or adaptation. And so we were looking at developing an intervention that would directly support an individual's developmental orientation, where they're at. So that because if you try to get everybody into an adaptation, but you're in denial, you're missing a whole area that they're not going to understand based on that continuum. So we developed this process. And part of that process, in just a moment, Lupita's going to talk about that. But I have one more slide I wanted to share, which is why are we doing this? And generally speaking, this was for 4-H at the time because, well, we received some funding from our division. Yet where we're at now, we've now expanded beyond just 4-H and expanded to our extension audience, extension colleagues outside of 4-H. But it's to really create a welcoming and safe environment within those communities that we do serve. So this program, the intervention that we've used, I've talked about a little bit, has been expanded to support other areas. Lupita and I are going to talk about 4-H, but I can share specifically that we've done interventions with the American Society of Horticultural Scientists, Ag Leadership, which is a group at UC Davis. It's an international or a national program. They work with ag advisors or agents across the US to do international work. We've also worked with Indiana at Purdue University to provide support for a program called Gear Up. And many of my colleagues have supported even local nonprofits or other entities in their training and understanding of intercultural competence. So it's beyond just 4-H. So Lupita, you have the next slide.
Thank you, Ross. So I'm going to share with you, and I don't want to go over the time, but I just want you to look at this slide. And basically, is the process of becoming intercultural. We talk a lot about serving new communities, about serving communities that we don't serve. But the reality is that in our counties and in our states, we have good intentions to do it, but we really don't know the how do we have to do it. So part of this situation was designed to teach the people to have conversations that might feel uncomfortable at the beginning and probably move on in the continuum. We know, and that's the research, and that was my dissertation research long time ago, that just being there is not going to change the people. Not because we send the people to work with the Latino community, they are going to be magically knowing the Latino community, or because we send the students abroad, they are going to become more cultural sensitive. That's not going to happen. Has to be intentionality if you would like to grow. So basically, everybody has their own culture. Even when you see people that look like you, deep down, and you have seen the analogy with the iceberg 1 million times, okay? So you see people, but you really don't know what we are talking about. But in our universities, we are very proud to say that we are multicultural environments. We have people from 100 countries, but what happened in the majority of the places where we work? People, you go to the cafeteria and people who look alike are sitting together. So we really have the people there, but we don't make any effort to interact with them. We see them like if we go window shopping and we see them from the outside. And that's exactly the difference between living in a multicultural environment and really thinking about how am I gonna diversify my audience. Same thing happened in extension. So then we needed tools, and the tools can be provided by becoming intercultural competent. That there is this easy way to explain is like, I want to learn how to work with people that are not like me. And that's the better description that I can find. And hopefully one day we will have people, extension programs that the people feel welcome and feel inclusive and feel, and right now we are far beyond that possibility. The next one, yeah. So in this, the next one, okay, do you like that? I try hard. Okay, so here is basically this is not the only tool that is out there, but the reality is that it's a tool that has been tested and tested and tested and give you a number. It might not be perfect, might not be what I want, but just give us an opportunity to grow. Because if you remember the continue, if you are in one place, you have your chance to move forward, and you have a numerical number, a numerical to move through the continue. So it's basically a model that has been proved, that is, it has all the statisticals and all the things tested. It's not cheap though, but it's a model that we are using. Okay, continue. Okay, so basically the IDI is good because create a personal and a group profile. So you can say, okay, Lupita Fabregas is in this stage, but the Missouri 4-H program is in this stage. And that really gives you an idea of where your people are. Because we probably are sending people to reach new audiences that are not ready to do that. And what happened is that we send them, and then the things turn worse than we thought that will be, right? And then one good thing about the IDI is that really creates a customized plan. So, okay, I'm here, but how can I improve? How can I do better? Little things like going to an international food, trying to order a meal in a Syrian restaurant, trying to see, we need to start looking at cultural differences. And that's the way that life is. Stop doing minimization, because we are not the same, and being different is okay. So the people cannot think like you. I wish that more people think like me, but that's not going to happen. So I hope that the people can understand that we act in a different way because our culture is just different. So the next one. So basically the design of the program, and I did this in Oklahoma before I went to California, then we worked in California, and then I'm doing this in Missouri. So basically we offer the IDI. This has to be voluntary, but we really motivated people to take it. You cannot force anybody to go through the process. Then we have 1 to 3 coaching sessions with every person that take the IDI, and we complete the plan. The most important piece for me is what we call the learning circles. It's like we divide the people into groups. The groups has a PowerPoint that take you through the conversation, so we can be sure that every person go to the same kind of intervention, if you will. And then we kind of put together some very controversial, if you, for example, the news, for example, some information that we pick up the morning that we do this, because you cannot imagine when you look at the news with a cultural sense, you can find a lot of examples. So what you foster in these learning circles is a conversation that the people feel comfortable talking about. For example, we start with denial. How do you think that the people react when they are in denial? In your 4-H club or in your extension council, what kind of comments are they making that allow you to think that they are on denial? How do you answer to those comments? Because confrontation is not a way. So how do you learn to answer to the comments that you are hearing? And at the end, we do a post-test just for the statistical purpose and for, of course, for the research purpose. And we want the people to understand that this is a progression, and this is not gonna stop. The next one, I'm gonna try to go a little. Okay, so basically the groups engage in the process. All the process are facilitated by a qualified administration, and the groups start building confidence one to another. They meet in the hallways, they meet in the campus, and they start having conversation. It's very interesting. The next one. So this is part of this is part of the conversation. For example, how people in the island monetization perceive culture. For example, we talk about that. For example, when you hear people saying, hey, people need to learn English because they are in the United States and that's the way that it is here. What stage are you in? How can you help them? How, if you think, okay, we are people and we share a lot of things, and I don't know why you make a big deal about offering cultural sensitive programs to this culture or this. We are all the same. Or what about when we ask the people and they say, don't worry, I put a fly in a supermarket that is for Latinos and they are gonna come. Oh, I'm sure that they will. So those kinds of things are important. And I think that we have tried. I always say that my time in California allowed me to make all the mistakes. We try a lot of things didn't work, and now we know a lot of things that can work. The next one. Okay, so basically in the learning we learn, we reflect, we plan, we adapt, and we apply. It's exactly what 4-H is about. What we learn and reflect, we learn by doing, but we really want the people to understand that this work applies to every county, to every part of the state. And we are going to share the results from California, from Missouri, that, well, we are very different. And there are a lot of things that we share, believe it or not. So, Dross, the next one.
Great, thank you, Lupita. We are going to share some results. So the proof's in the pudding, right? So we developed this. We had an assessment, and the folks who did this were all researchers, we're social scientists. So we wanted to make sure what we were doing actually worked. So part of this was to actually capture the data. So this is a picture of what the information looks like when you get it from the IDI. In 2014, we had about 89 participants who took the test. And you can see our organization was in minimization. So again, you can see there's these trailing ends, with minimization being the largest, from 85 to 115 points on that scale, denial and adaptation being trailing ends. This was where our organization was at in 2014. In 2015, we did a post-test, and that post-test was after we did our learning circles, after a statewide conference, after a feedback session with, or feedback sessions with the qualified administrators. And there's also built into the IDI an individual development plan that says, here's the things that you should be doing or looking at based upon your current developmental orientation. So with that, by the way, all of that equals to about 40 hours, 40 to 50 hours in a year worth of time. So it's 40 to 50 hours you're going to have to devote to this to make that change. Well, you can see the pre-test or the post-test, we moved ahead to 112. So that's a movement. We're on what they used to call that is the cusp of acceptance. When you move into that gray area, it means the majority of your organization is there. Well, we did another post-test in 2018 with 30 participants. Our numbers were dwindling. We had a lot of people moving back and forth, but these are the same 30 people who started in cohort 1. So we have had 3 cohorts since go through this at this point. And this is cohort 1. So in 2018, 30 people took that, and now they went through a second year of the meetings, some more individual development plan work, an additional 40 to 50 hours of work, and they moved into acceptance. And as our organization as a whole, the 4-H organization, we moved from minimization into acceptance. And that's a major change. That's organizational change. That's the thing you're looking for. And the organizational change wasn't just about the individuals, but the org need to make the change. I typed about it in the notes, which was we needed to make this happen, and it's continuing to happen to this day. So in California, we continue these, and we're on to our third cohort. So I'm going to show you cohort 2, and you can see the change here. So we had a test in 2016 and a test in 2018, pre and post, doing the exact same work. We show and we know this works. We know this works. So Lupita has some results from Missouri as well.
Thank you so much. And I'm gonna start, but this is the way that you see some of the numbers in the report. It's not the only ones that you see. There are a lot of information that you can pull out, but I want you to this is my pre-test, okay? And when we talk about perceived orientation and developmental orientation, the perceived orientation is the place where people believe that they are. Okay?
That's their mindset.
You can see that it's acceptance, and in the developmental orientation is the place where they are. That's the skill set. So as you can see, normally the perceived orientation is normally higher than the developmental orientation. So the people from 4-H in Missouri that was tested, score in the middle of minimization at that time. The next one. After we did the learning circles, okay, this is what we found. The profile for the mindset is still very high, but we move the needle. And I just want you to see that. It doesn't look, if you go to the next one, it's a comparison. If you look at this, it doesn't, just check this. We 7.18 points in a scale of 90 points. So that's 88%. And I'm gonna be honest with you, in the state of Missouri, we don't have the diversity that California has. So the people that work in a state like ours, they need to make a stronger effort because they don't see people that are not like them in the supermarket or in the gas station or in the schools where their kids. So they really need to learn how, in case that they find people in the states like Missouri and probably in some of the states, we have a strong urban areas. The majority of the diversity talking about race or ethnicity are in those areas, and the rest of the state is not very diverse when we talk about race or ethnicity. So I feel that we are gonna keep offering the trainings for the people, and we are gonna try to keep moving the needle. The next one, please. What is the payoff? So basically, in the short term, we are making a big impact, increasing good. Sometimes I think, okay, at least you are getting to hear the people talking about this. At least they have this under the radar. At least, so I think that at least we are doing something. I just cannot be the kind of person that just talk the talk and not walk the walk. So this is something that you can implement in your state, and it's something that is really changing people. And of course, in the medium, we hope that we increase diversity of youth, families, and volunteers in extension. And in the long term, I really hope that extension can serve all the people that we have in our, not just the people like look like us, and or the people that I feel comfortable working with. Okay, I always make the example that when I organize a party, I love to invite my Mexican friends because they don't care if I'm late. They don't care if the food is spicy. They don't care if instead of the 2 to 4, they arrive at 5. They don't care. But of course, I need to make an effort to invite my American friends. And this is what this all about, is that there is no magic on this. You have to learn how to live with people that are not like you. The next one, please. The next one, and you are off. No, that's me. So basically, this is the organizational outcomes, is that the model is institutional in California, in Missouri right now. I know that other people from other states are applying for grants to get this done, and I will be happy to share my budget with anybody. But in California, really, we move the needle with the Latino initiative. Of course, we have $2 million. We hire 7 people. That's a little easy when you want to move them, but it's showing that really is a possibility. If you invest, the story about the Latinos don't care about 4-H. They don't care about extension. That's done. That's not something that we can use anymore. If we make an effort and we set the resources that we need, we can reach populations that we are reaching. And in Missouri, my basically, well, you know the concept of parity. In Missouri, we reach parity for almost all the groups that are listed in the USDA report, and that's a huge, huge effort. Every year that I was there, I sent to every advisor a list of their percentage of each one of the groups and the percentage that they were reaching. So we have intentionality in reaching other audiences. And in Missouri, for example, we are really start talking about diversity and about inclusion, and we are applying for grants to do cultural development. I got a CIFER grant just 3 months after I came here, and I'm reaching the Latino communities in the Kansas City area. But this shows a commitment from the state, and that's important when anybody reads your grant application. Go, Ross, sorry.
No, it's all right. Thank you, Lupita. So what's next? So Lupita had the opportunity to leave California and take the directorship in Missouri. She had been doing this work prior to coming to California, came to California. We organized ourselves to really develop our IDI program, our intervention. And then she went to Missouri. She happened to be there with it. She implemented this program there, right? So for our sake, that was great for the research. It's going from the pilot to the next test. Well, we have been successful. So in 2017 or 2018, I forget which year, this program, this intervention actually won the National Extension Directors Association Diversity Award, and we were recognized for the work that we were doing. We've written up a couple of Journal of Extension articles that detail the program, that detail the process that we used. It talks about the whole building support internally, leadership development, all these things that really, need to happen when you are seeking support to make organizational change. So in California specifically, we've expanded beyond 4-H. Our learning and development team actually came to us and asked us to submit a business proposal to them to provide this opportunity to folks outside of 4-H. Since 4-H had its own money, we had no money elsewhere to come from to do this training, and it takes some of our time. And it's about, by the way, the test is only $15 per pre-test and post-test. That's the cheapest part of this thing. It's the time getting somebody trained as a qualified administrator or bringing in a QA from another institution, and then the time to develop and institute your learning circles. So there were, at one point, there were 6 of us in California leading learning circles 4 times a year. Those learning circles were about 2 hours each. We did our follow-up, with every person. It was about an hour to hour and a half phone call with every person who participated in this. So there's a lot of time invested in this. And so the learning and development team came to us and asked us to put together a proposal to lead 30 of our extension colleagues outside of 4-H through this process. So now that's where we're going into cohort 3 and 4. And we are preparing to host a conference next for cohort 3. They haven't been to one yet. Thanks COVID for all of that stuff. We kind of hit a wall for a while, and we'll be starting cohort 4 in spring of this year. So it'll be another 30 of our extension colleagues. And we know this works. We've had success. We've worked with folks, again, from Indiana, American Society of Horticultural Scientists, the folks from National Ag Leadership Program, and so on. So that's kind of where we're at. And what I think Lupita and I are here to share is, first off, it's successful. Number 2 is, call us. You have questions, we're here to answer them. We can support you. We can consult with you, whatever that looks like. If your institution, your organization is looking to make organizational change, this we know will work. It's with the directed time and activities. And Lupita, is there anything, have you guys gone beyond just 4-H yet, or is that something you're still working on in Missouri?
We are doing just 4-H right now, but and I don't know if the people, I'm making a presentation to all extension on Tuesday, so hopefully the people will be interested, but we are having problems because the people that I train, they left. I have 6 and 2 left, so I have to send some people to Portland to be trained and then think about growing the program.
Yeah, and that is the thing with us as well in California. Lupita left. We've had other people have taken different positions or they've gone to another job. So once you lose a qualified administrator, you do need to recruit other ones, because that is the key for the leadership or facilitation of all of this. And I don't remember what the cost is. It's under $2,000, but more than $1,500, somewhere in there to be qualified as an administrator for the program. And that's the only requirement that Mitch Hammer and his team requires, is if we're going to use the name and emblem of IDI, that you need to have somebody who's qualified or who has been trained, and you bring them in as a person to do that. But at this time, I do want to say thank you to everybody for sharing your time with us today. Lupita and I are really happy to bring this to you. We had one other colleague, Keith Nathaniel, who was part of this, but I'm in Davis today. We're having our first statewide meeting in a long time, and they invited him to be the keynote or a first day speaker as well. So he couldn't present today with us. So it was probably good. There's only 2 of us presenting, and we have limited time. So we do want to open it up to any questions or comment. I'm going to stop the screen share at this point. So if you all have questions for us, thank you, Ramona. $1,600. I knew it was more than 15, but less than 2,000.
Well, thank you, Russell and Lupita. What questions do you have regarding their experiences with this program?
So I have a question, and thank you, Russell and Lupita, and thank you for your journal article on this important subject. I came across it in the search. I wanted to know, you talked about creating that change culture and getting that buy-in from admin, and I'm sure that was not an easy road. So just wondered if you could share a couple of the strategies that you used or that you found helpful as you were building support internally to create that change culture.
Yeah, you have to look for your champions internally. So while it may not be, and Lupita is going to probably say much of the similar thing, which was not everybody was behind it. Those who were may have been behind it because the USDA came to us and told us we needed to make change. And so that was a different kind of driver, but you look for your champions internally, for people who support the work that you were trying to accomplish. It wasn't easy up front. Lupita came in at the time the change was happening to the statewide program. She was challenged often with trying to bring our own leadership in California. And I'm talking about our most senior leadership within the Division of Ag and Natural Resources, or extension leadership. Our 4-H side, we were all in on this. Like, as soon as we saw this, we were in on it. There was no turning around for us. And there was buy-in. There was a little bit of buy-in on our educator levels. So the ones that work in the counties, we needed to buy in and have conversation because it was a volunteer program. It was not required, but we did get 80 people the first time to do this. But it really is, Ramona, about finding champions within your system to really get people to think about why we need to make this change. Lupita, go ahead and share, because I know you have this now from your experience.
I think in California, the idea started before my time, but the need of engaging new audiences was the most, because like Ross said, the review from NIFA was not very good for California, and we needed to reach more diverse audiences. So it was a combination in between the people willing to try, resources that were put, and the pressure to have to reach new audiences. In Missouri, when I came here, it always helped that I'm the state leader, and that always helped, but I have a boss, Marshall Stewart, that really buy this into, and it's not hard to ask the people to do it. What is hard is to ask the people to be consistent, because since it's voluntary, you cannot force the process. Sometimes the people, as you can see with Ross and everybody in the numbers, we start with 89 and then we ended with 30. And that's exactly what happened here too. We start very enthusiastic, but it's a time commitment. So I will say that the leaders in your state need to be absolutely sure that you want to do this, because the heat is coming. So every time that you try to do something like that, you need to have difficult conversations with a lot of people. So if they are not getting the buy-in, that's not gonna happen.
Any other questions for Russell or Lupita?
And Ramona, I see your comment there. Yeah, we went into this with as a voluntary, and I can tell you there was only maybe 10% of the entire 4-H staff audience that did not end up participating in this in the first round and the second round. And I think 4-H staff are in a slightly different position in that they're perceived, if you remember the perceived orientation, right? We have this mindset that we want, that we're better at intercultural competencies than we actually are. So that skill set, mindset versus skill set. And they were in, our staff and our academics were in a mindset already, like we know we need to do better. We know we need to serve our communities better. They just didn't have the skill set to do it. So the buy-in was on the 4-H side, I think, was probably a lot easier, particularly after we saw our own review and to actually have that officially stated, not just knowing that it's knowing it there, but having it in front of our faces and saying we need to do better and this is how we're going to do it. With our extension colleagues, it really has been like it's an optional professional development opportunity for them, and it was free if they wanted to participate. It only cost them $100. We had them do a little bit of a buy-in into the process for our time, and we use that for offsetting our own time for the program, but it really wasn't that much. So Yeah, there is obviously a much more on 4-H side. If it went mandatory, I don't think we would have as much buy-in, believe it or not.
And you cannot put this in their plan of work. You cannot put it in their professional development because has to be voluntary. If not, everybody's gonna file a complaint in your office of Title IX or the other ones on diversity, and you cannot make this mandatory.
So that was another follow-up that I was thinking of asking, and I was going to put it in the chat box. I already started. It's like, how did you provide that time for them? Because like you said, it's something you're seeing in the NIFA report. It's something your organization knows needs to be done. But a challenge with extension is we're always moving from one thing to the next, right? So we never get that time that we need to process, to reflect, to do the hard work that I oftentimes hear people label as the heart work, the work that needs to be done internally in order for us to make the progress that we need. So how was that time? Was this really, like you said, I know Russell, you quoted like 40 to 50 hours. They did this on their own time, in their personal time, if you would, off the job, off the clock.
It was actually allowed for during the job if they agreed to it. County directors and our statewide director of 4-H at the time. So we had, let me put it this way. So directed time with a qualified administrator, time on phone calls or Zoom calls or in person for the learning circles, plus our statewide conference equals about 20 hours. So they needed to come up with another 20 to 30 hours of their own time off the books, right? So the 20 hours on the books was that. So they needed to, whether they're going to go out to a community event or a gathering, if they're going to read some books or watch some TV shows, if they're going to travel somewhere, all of that was going to be as part of their own reflection, right? That's part of the reflection process. So we can do a lot of the, doing and reflecting during the meetings, but the application and the and also having that time to reflect is out of that time. So when we did a assess, so we have our assessments. We also did a follow-up with our own questions, like how much time did you spend? What kind of support did you get from your supervisor for this? Were there challenges? So we had some other questions that we did ask outside of that to figure out what was best. And then we adapted cohort 2 to better meet those needs. So really, it ends up being about 20 hours over the course of a year of their own time, which that could be maybe 2 weekends, particularly if they're going to go to a cultural event in their community and learn a little bit about what's going on.
Ramona, and one thing that worked and just helped me here is that I came up with the idea that if your county reach parity, we create a diploma. I framed the diplomas, and in front of everybody, I gave the diplomas away so they can put it in their office. And the diploma was saying, you reach parity for this specific group in your county. Congratulations. And I had a conversation with the person that is in charge of Sacramento County. And she told me, Lupita, you cannot imagine how much that meant to me. So it's just how much can you spend? The recognition is always important. It's just showing up your champions in public, in everything that you have in the newspaper. These are the people that are making the effort, that we are always, sometimes we lack of giving our people a recognition when we think that is part of the job, right?
Great discussion. I really appreciate this. I'm curious if we could maybe crowdsource some ideas. So for folks who have been sitting back and taking this in, what are your thoughts about sort of like, how do we institutionalize this maybe across the country? Are there opportunities for even just identifying, who those qualified administrators are within the cooperative extension system? I mean, is there a catalog of those people? Are there opportunities here for multi-state collaboration? What thoughts do you have? And then we'll see what Jose has to say.
Well, Marlon, I think that actually might not be a bad deal for ESP as part of our information collection in the future, finding out who are QAs. So I know there's lots of us out there. A lot of us have been doing this for a while. We just aren't aware of who else and where else is being done. And 4-H is a little easier.
Laura
it-
said something, Laura, that there is a list, Florida do have a list of IDI qualifiers, but might be a good idea during our conference, just ask everybody if they know people, and we can, or maybe we can send to every state your list of qualified administrators, and I don't know, but it's important to know.
Jose?
Well, two things. The first one is it safe to assume that like our diversity, equity, and inclusion officers are like should be part of that list? If we had a list, I guess, the imaginary list.
I think that would be a first starting point for most institutions, I would hope, if they are going to be IDI qualified. Again, there's other programs out there, but if you know, the IDI directors would be the great person to start with as the internal champion for this work.
And not everybody is in the same stage, and I think it's important because, and I'm not going to say stage, but there are states that are in the stage of just getting to have little conversations about diversity. Diversity talk here and there, they check the box, we are doing our effort, and when they have a review, they check the boxes, and that's it. There are other group of universities that are trying harder, but it depends on your diversity and inclusion people, where are they and what do they want in the long run. My perception is that a little talk here and there is not moving the needle, my friends. We have done that for years and years and years. We have to be more intentional.
And I want to go back to what Lupita said earlier about recognizing folks making efforts to reach parity, because that spoke volumes to me, because when I started this position in my work, I was told about parity, and that's actually a policy for us here, is that is a goal for extension, is to reach parity and do everything we can to reach that. But in my experience here, it doesn't seem like, even though we're told that, it doesn't seem like a lot of people have that as a priority or really make intentional actions to try to get to that point. And so when I started, we have the Juntos program in Oregon. It's separate to 4-H. So one of the things that I was requested in our county is 4-H was very, very white. I'll just say that. It's not including some of the other ethnic and racial groups in the area. And not from a lack of effort. I think, there was some effort, but there was challenges. And so when we were reporting our numbers, I was basically being asked to use our Juntos numbers as 4-H. And I, being young and new, I felt intimidated to say no, but I felt like I needed to say no because I had to express that those were not truly 4-H youth that were not being served by 4-H. They were being served by specifically the Juntos program. And so it felt disingenuous for me to count those. And I would submit those numbers to say, we can count those as extension county programming numbers, but not 4-H, because they were not served by 4-H. They were not 4-H members. And so they were never reached out to by 4-H, even though, I would invite folks to come do presentations and stuff to the students. So I think having that is important, and recognizing that, because otherwise there's really no sense of accountability for it. We do the, civil rights reviews, but it's almost like every time like, oh, we made a very marginal improvement, and that's, we pat ourselves on the back and that's it, but it's very minimal.
Thanks, Jose. Well, I want to thank our speakers today. Thank you, Russell, for pitching the idea several months ago, and Lupita for joining Russell today. Your contributions to this discussion very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to the rest of you, also thanks for joining. Just a couple of reminders. We do have the ESP National conferences coming up in Branson, Missouri. Maybe Lupita will be there. I know she didn't just give a thumbs down on that.
No, that is
okay. I saw this.
No.
So we will have a couple of opportunities to gather as an affinity group, and I've had the opportunity to do that a couple of times at those national meetings, and I will say it's a wonderful experience. And if you're on the fence about participating and coming to Branson, I strongly encourage your serious consideration to punch that ticket. I know they extended the early bird rate. I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but I believe that we're still in there, maybe to the 12th or something. So that's like $100 off still. So consider attending and join us. And then just as a reminder, we're recruiting. So we've got a few positions on the leadership team that we need nominees for. And then reach out to Julie or Ramona if you're interested in leadership in the city, or visit with Chris about the Cultivating Change Summit that's coming up in Washington, D.C. at the beginning of October. So that's it for the August Urban and Culturally Diverse Audiences Affinity Group meeting.
Thanks for having
your
us,
time
everybody.
today.
We appreciate your time today. Thank you. We'll see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.